So I guess the first thing I wanted to talk to know about, and then we could all just chat, is about your draft order stuff. So you were tasked with writing a draft. Can you talk a little bit about how you got involved with Oren and Ariella, and kind of the first thing that came to your mind when you decided that you wanted to kind of sit down some things that you and I and all of us have talked about for decades in some sort of formal academic setting.
Well, I guess the first thing that came to mind when I was asked to do this, and first let me just take one moment and once again thank you for all you do, not only for the jam music community, but for the Jewish community, but for the overlap once again. But and I think you'll understand this when I say my chapter is called Torah and Torah, because to me what's happening on tour, both in terms of when we experience the music and hopefully perhaps even more so in terms of the relationships and the friendships that we have, and the way we kind of balance that personal aspect of revelation with the communal obligations and benefits that come with that, to me really is something that I can only call Torah. And to me, obviously in many ways when we experience Judaism and we experience Phish, we can see there's a lot of on the surface overlaps, like with Avinu Malkeinu, which we just played, which is really great. And to me, one of the things I love about Phish is also the fact that they can have a song called Susie Greenberg, and that's just a song that they're playing, but that's obviously a very Jewish name right up there with Susie Q. So there's a lot of that. You can see kind of the overlaps going on between the Game Hen saga of the outsider who comes to redeem the enslaved people by receiving the law on the mountaintop from the lawgiver. Obviously a lot of parallels to Torah in the literal sense, and the Exodus, and the giving of Torah on Mount Sinai. But to me, ultimately, I find that Judaism and Torah and Phish a lot of times aren't pointing at each other, but are pointing kind of in the same direction. This life experience out there, teaching us how to experience that connection and revelation that we can get through the source, whether it's through the music or whether it's through our prayer or our study, but also creating a venue for us to experience that revelation that comes from the connections we find with one another here. So I wanted to bring that together, and I think it's amazing to find. There's a lot of great writing in the book about Phish and about the music, but I think the word that came up most was community, and I think that's really the thing. And one thing I talked about in the book, and which I talked about at the Phish Studies Conference, and hopefully in the upcoming book that's coming out of those proceedings, is that what is the name of the sacred text that we have in Phish? It's the Helping Friendly book. It's right there on the face. That's what it's all about, and hopefully that's what we're learning about in Judaism as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the word community was the buzzword for the book in the best possible way. I think people definitely identify with that. Whether people wear Star of David necklaces and yarmulkes to simplify one thing, they wear Phish shirts or stuff that has insignias from various lyrics, and it's similar, identifying moments. Sometimes it's more subtle, sometimes it's more in your face, and you know you're with your people.
And sometimes those things in each community are very direct. Like in Phish we have the different communities, the subgroups based on whether you're a flat brimmer or you're a curved brimmer. And in Judaism, in the Hasidic groups, whether you wear your brim up or down says a lot about you too. So you can see kind of a lot of parallels in the material culture too, which I think we can find comforting.
Right.
And just like also, as Jews who are been some strangers in a strange land wherever we are, and as Phish heads, maybe also when we're outside of the festival and outside of the show, maybe also feel a bit like we're not always at home in all aspects of the world. I know, like when I'm going through an airport, if I see someone wearing a yarmulke, I feel like, oh, those are my people. But if I see someone wearing donuts, I also feel like, oh, those are my people. So it's great to be able to get that connection from both of these communities.
One of the other, I think, through lines through this book, and people come up with their own answers, is why Phish and Judaism have this amazing Venn diagram. Two of the members of the band are Jewish, of course, but two are not, and the primary songwriter is not. And though it feels like there's a huge Jewish community, because there is compared to other bands, I'm sure that just like in America, which feels like sometimes there's a large Jewish community, it's still a very small part of the larger thing. And I think everyone comes to their own reasons why Judaism and Phish are so associated with each other. I know Oren talked a little bit about, of course, like summer camp and how those things together. I talked a little bit about people in college in the Northeast in the 90s when Phish was kind of coming through the ranks. And it's very interesting. I remember I live in New York, and I remember 10 years ago, we were driving to the Dagger Heights Lights, and one of my friends know that there's a lot of factors, but was there something you discovered when you were working with craft or just reading whatever else had to say?
Well, I mean, there's something I think I discovered there, and maybe I also discovered that a bit in the Phish Studies conference that I went to, which was also an amazing experience. Much like the book, where you had different chapters that were coming and viewing the Phish-Jewish connection from different approaches. I was kind of theological in mine. As you pointed out, there were a lot of sociological and anthropological perspectives. Also, in the Phish conference, there was everything from again, my discussion of Phish lyrics and ethical texts and Jewish ethical texts to economic analysis and jamming as a corporate model of production, as presented by Mr. Halstern right over there, which I've thought about in so many different contexts. It was great seeing how it's a lot of low stakes decisions that repeat, and you can experiment and try and move forward. This is a great process for decision life. I also was on a panel with a Stoic scholar, a Greek Stoic scholar, and when I made my presentation, it was obvious that Phish was talking about Jewish texts. And then he made his presentation, I'm like, it's obvious Phish was talking about Seneca the whole time. That so well. But what came out over and over again in the book too is this concept of flow, which maybe we've heard about a bit in Judaism under different names, whether it's Hesed or Shefa, and of course obviously we hear about very much in the Helping Friendly book that Chicken to surrender to the flow, and the idea of achieving a flow state. And I think that's something which obviously is hard to describe, but I think a good connector when we're there, when we're experiencing the music, when we're feeling a connection, when we feel like we're opening ourselves up maybe a bit to being a vessel. I know many years ago in the 1.0 days, Phish famously opened for Santana. And as you may know, Santana is a very, very deep guy, and I believe maybe those like after that, someone asked him to describe Phish, and I believe his answer was Phish is a hose.
Yes, exactly.
Which of course is a vessel, which takes a flow and channels a flow. And of course, flow also needs channeling as well to be effective. And in Judaism, that balance between the flow and the challenge state is very important. I think as individuals it shows, when we're balancing our own experience and desires with hopefully the crews and the friendship and communities, and our responsibilities to one another, we try to work that balance. And then also when we're there in the show, really getting in the zone and feeling the music, and we're feeling all this flow of thoughts and hopefully emotional catharsis going through us. At the same time, hopefully we're also trying not to step on our best friend's feet, and maintaining that awareness beyond us. And obviously sometimes that's a difficult thing to skirt. Obviously for musicians who are involved in improvisational music, having the balance between your flow and leaving space for others is a big part of that. And in the book I talk about the amazing Phish book that Richard Gere, I always want to say Richard Gere, but and Phish did back in the 1.0 days. They talk about after, I believe, the 98 Colorado Denver shows, when they talk about how they started to leave space for Mike, and Fishman started to play more sparsely and leave space for each other, and that's how that opened them up, and that's what allowed things to flow much more deeply, and that's kind of what brought them into their peak state. So I think hopefully those lessons about being able to strike that balance between revelation and responsibility are things that we learn through Torah and through Judaism, and hopefully are some bit of what we're tapping into here. And maybe, there's a lot of us who maybe in this broader world, broader culture we find ourselves in, don't always find that. Hopefully we can find ourselves a bit closer to that than Phish, and hopefully a bit closer to that in this context as well.
Santana, who obviously is not Jewish, and also Colonel Bruce Hampton, I would say, are the two kind of elder improvisational musicians that I found it relevant to. Year after year, you interview musicians, and they've almost had these like rabbinic meetings with these. They've almost had these rabbinic meetings with these people, where like Garrett Trucks and Trey and Robert Randolph and all these people kind of came through their school, where they had these moments where they spoke, where Bruce or Carlos spoke to them and gave them this sage advice, which they still think about every time they're on stage, even though they haven't crossed paths with that musician for years, or that musician passed away.
And maybe we also kind of bring into another aspect, which to me is part of the reason why I love that Phish is a Jewish experience, but also why I love the fact that Phish is also a lot more than that. Is, I love the fact that I can find spiritual community in Jewish context, but sometimes being a Jew in a wider world which is not oriented towards that, sometimes it can be difficult to find ways to connect in a spiritual sense beyond the Jewish community, but also feel really authentic to the Jewish community. And I think Phish is one of those environments where we can. We say we're going to shul. A lot of people sometimes talk about they're going to church there, but it's a spiritual context. We can be with our Phish friends who are. There's a concept in Judaism that the Jewish people are the children of Israel, but there's also the concept that everyone are the children of Noah. And sometimes I think we don't always remember that. We don't always connect with that. And within the traditional Jewish context, Judaism has a lot of mitzvahs and moral imperatives and commandments for Jews, as well as a lot of rituals and ceremonies. But in the traditional way that Judaism thinks about non-Jews, there's some moral principles that they should ascribe to, but that's it. So it's great to find some really what feel like really authentic spiritual environments that both non-Jews and Jews can come to and connect to and feel really genuine and rooted in their own tradition, but also be able to find how different traditions are pointing to the same place. Like Santana, I think obviously was tapping into what Phish was doing, and as we are too. And I also just want to step back to the one thing you pointed out to before. Yes, two of the Phish members are not Jewish, and Phish's primary songwriter is not Jewish. But one of Phish's very significant lyricists, although not primary, is Jewish, and the Dude of Life, Steve Pollack, who penned Susie Greenberg, which you could say isn't necessarily an explicitly Jewish song, but uses the Jewish name without thinking twice. But also perhaps there's a bit in maybe some of the sense of humor that comes from Steve that also kind of relates to kind of a Jewish perspective and sense of humor. And I had one recent story, an insight about this. As some of you may know, I'm also a musician, and I just did a tour with Fred Scholl, who's the Dude of Life's guitarist, which was a great experience because in addition to playing with him, I got to hear a lot of stories from his playing with the Dude of Life there, and we were talking about You Enjoy Myself, related to You Enjoy Myself. As you all know, boy, man, got the God shit, which I always thought was actually like a really great team talking about like a metaphysical hierarchy and chain of being, and then subverting it and bringing it around. But like Fred told me that Steve told him, where those lyrics come from originally. Do you know the story? He said,
I know they were in Italy.
They were in Italy. Those are all things you say when you bang your toe.
It's true.
It is. It absolutely is. But I think there's something very Jewish about taking a thing and being, this is so high but deep, and going around there too. You banged your toe. There it is. So I definitely think that I want to pay tribute to the Jude and Steve, but I think that ethos is there, and it's also great that the way that I think of Peter Montano, and I think you talked about this before too, came up into the repertoire is because everyone was bringing in their influences, their music, and brought them to the table. And like Trey brought Daniel Salvestone to the table because that's a great American spiritual tradition, and Mike brought in his great spiritual tradition, and it's really great to have an environment where that flows just so naturally.
Definitely, and I think that it's also interesting that we always, as you mentioned, a lot of people say they're going to church or synagogue or shul, and it's really a Phish show or a Dead show or another festival setting, and I definitely can relate to that, and I've said that in the past. But one of the things that makes this community, this Jewish Phish community, be able to thrive in that is one is a lot of the customs and the rituals and things that don't have to be tied to a brick and mortar place. You could have a complete, authentic religious service and spiritual experience in any setting with the right people around you and by following the right rituals. And also, what reminded me to say that is that when Mike was choosing what music to bring in and chose to be Montana, one of the reasons he chose that is that it was a prayer that meant a lot to him, it was powerful, but didn't necessarily have to be tied to an exact piece of music. Even if they could rearrange the music and place it within the name something yesterday, and it would feel natural and authentic and not sacrilegious versus maybe some other songs that have hymns that are more tied to the orthodoxy, which I thought is a unique thing for the band and the Santana and now we're talking about.
And it works so well, just musically for fans, but also, and again, without being very subtle and unspoken, those are both songs which are about creating portals and going through portals, and it's beautiful how that just flows so naturally, and